I died on a Tuesday. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind of death where the monitors flatline and doctors rush in shouting medical jargon. No, mine was quiet. Just me, slipping away in a hospital room while my 5-year-old son fought for his life 3 doors down. The last thing I remember was the text message from my husband, Marcus. The papers are filed. I'm sorry, Olivia, I can't do this anymore. I remember staring at those words, feeling my heart stutter while the rest of me went numb. 3 months we'd been in this hospital, 3 months of watching our son, Noah, endure treatment after treatment for his leukemia. 3 months of me sleeping in a chair beside his bed, of bargaining with God, of forcing myself to smile when Noah looked at me with those eyes that were too knowing for a child his age. And all that time, Marcus had been, what, planning his escape? It wasn't just the betrayal that killed me, it was the timing. Who leaves when their child might be dying? Who walks away when their wife is running on coffee and prayer, sleeping 2 hours a night, tracking medication schedules, and trying to keep their son's spirits up? The doctors said it was an aneurysm, stress-induced possibly. One moment I was sitting there, holding my phone with those words burning into my retinas, and the next, nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. I woke up. But I didn't wake up in that hospital room. I didn't wake up to the beeping of machines, or the antiseptic smell, or the sound of nurses in the hallway. I woke up in my bedroom, our bedroom, the one Marcus and I had shared for 7 years of marriage. The sunlight was streaming through the curtains, the light yellow ones I'd replaced with blackout curtains when Noah was born because the morning sun would wake him too early. The yellow ones that had been taken down years ago, my first thought was that I was having some kind of near-death experience, that classic life flashing before your eyes phenomenon. My second thought was that I was hallucinating from exhaustion and grief. My third thought came when I raised my hands to rub my eyes and saw my wrists. Smooth, unmarked. The IV bruise that had become a permanent feature was gone. So was the small burn scar from when I'd accidentally touched the oven rack 2 years ago. I stumbled out of bed and caught my reflection in the mirror. My hair was long again, not the practical shoulder-length cut I'd gotten when Noah first got sick. My face was fuller, without the hollowed-out look of someone who's been surviving on vending machine snacks and cafeteria sandwiches. And I was wearing a nightgown I'd thrown away years ago. "Olivia, you up?" Marcus's voice called from downstairs, his voice, casual, normal, not the carefully controlled tone he'd been using for months whenever he deigned to show up at the hospital. My heart lurched. This wasn't a dream. This was too vivid, too detailed. Every sense was engaged. The feel of the hardwood under my bare feet, the smell of coffee brewing downstairs, the distant sound of a lawnmower from a neighbor's yard. When I saw the date on my phone, July 15th, 2018, I finally understood. I had gone back. 6 years back, before Noah got sick, before Marcus left, before everything fell apart. I was 31 again, not 37. My son was not dying in a hospital bed. My husband had not just abandoned us both. And if this was real, if this impossible thing had actually happened, then maybe I could stop it all. Maybe I could save my son. Maybe I could save my marriage. But as I stood there, memories of my other life, my future life, settled over me like a weight. And I realized something. I didn't want to save my marriage. Marcus had shown me who he truly was. He had abandoned me and our critically ill child in our darkest hour. That wasn't something that happened in a vacuum. That was the culmination of 1,000 smaller betrayals I had been too blind to see. No, I wouldn't try to save my marriage, but my son, my beautiful, brave Noah, I would move heaven and earth to save him. "Are you feeling okay?" Marcus asked, eyeing me over his coffee mug. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I thought. "Yours." "I'm fine," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Just had a strange dream." It was surreal, sitting across the breakfast table from him. This younger version of Marcus, his face unlined, his eyes clear, his shoulders unburdened. This was before the fights about money, before the late nights at the office, before he met Jessica, his paralegal, who I later discovered had been so much more. But mostly, this was before Noah got sick, and Marcus revealed his true colors. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Prestons tonight," he said, scrolling through his phone. "Kevin's promoting me to senior partner." Ah, yes. Kevin Preston, the managing partner at Marcus's law firm. The man who had sent a generic get well card when Noah was admitted to the oncology ward and never once visited. The same man who had given Marcus time off for the divorce proceedings, but balked when Marcus had initially asked for family leave to be with his sick child. Actually, I said, making a split-second decision, I'm not feeling great. I think I might need to skip it. Marcus looked up sharply. What? Liv, this is important. This is my career we're talking about. How many times had I heard that phrase? My career. Not our future or our family's security. Just my career. I know, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. But I think I'm coming down with something. You should still go, of course. He frowned, but I could see the relief in his eyes. He didn't want to miss the dinner, and he didn't particularly care if I was there or not. Are you sure? What about Noah? Noah, my heart seemed to stop at the mention of his name. In this timeline, he was healthy, he was alive and well, and not hooked up to machines. I can handle Noah, I said. We'll have a movie night. Marcus nodded, already turning back to his phone. Okay. I'll tell Kevin you're under the weather. Just like that, no concern for my health. No offer to stay home himself. Just easy acceptance that suited his plans. How had I never seen it before? Mommy, can we watch Moana again? Noah asked, his small hand clutching mine as we stood in front of the DVD shelf. My beautiful boy, 5 years old in this timeline, with a gap where his front tooth was missing and a spray of freckles across his nose. Healthy, whole, not the pale, thin child with dark circles under his eyes that he would become. I knelt down to his level, drinking in the sight of him. His curly hair that never stayed combed. His bright eyes, so much like mine. The Spider-Man Band-Aid on his elbow from a playground scrape. We can watch whatever you want, baby, I said, my voice thick. And we can have ice cream for dinner. His eyes widened. Really? But you always say ice cream is for after dinner. I laughed and pulled him into a hug, breathing in his little boy smell of grass and fruit snacks and the bubble bath he loved. Sometimes rules are meant to be broken. As we cuddled on the couch later, Noah happily spooning chocolate ice cream into his mouth while cartoon characters sang on the screen, I mentally calculated. If my memory was correct, and every moment of Noah's illness was seared into my brain like a brand, his first symptoms wouldn't appear for another 8 months. The fatigue that I had initially attributed to a growth spurt, the bruises that seemed to appear out of nowhere, the low-grade fever that never quite went away. 8 months. I had 8 months to prepare, to research, to get second opinions before we ever set foot in that cursed hospital where Dr. Stevens would look at us with grave eyes and say, I'm afraid it's leukemia. But I knew something else too. This type of leukemia, the one that would invade my son's body, had genetic components. It wasn't entirely random. There were risk factors. And some of those risk factors were present from birth, which meant Noah might already have the cancer in his body, just dormant, undetected. Waiting, I pulled him closer, breathing in the scent of his hair, and made a silent vow, not this time. I won't lose you this time. When Marcus came home that night, I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I heard him moving around the room, the familiar sounds of him undressing, brushing his teeth, setting his alarm. In my previous life, I would have rolled over, asked him about the dinner, listened attentively as he talked about work politics and client prospects. I would have made all the right noises, asked all the right questions, been the supportive wife I thought I was supposed to be. This time, I kept my breathing even and my back to him. After a minute, I felt the bed dip as he got in beside me. There was a pause, and then his hand settled on my hip. Liv, you awake? He murmured, his fingers already sliding under the hem of my nightgown. Something cold and hard settled in my stomach. How many times had this happened? Him, coming home late from work, waking me up for sex that was more about his release than any mutual pleasure. How many times had I sleepily complied, believing this was what marriage was? I kept my breathing steady, feigning sleep. His hand lingered for a moment longer, then withdrew with a sigh. The bed shifted as he rolled away. In my previous life, I might have felt guilty. I might have turned over, might have given him what he wanted to avoid an argument or cold silence in the morning. But that Olivia was gone. That Olivia had died in a hospital room while her husband was filing divorce papers. This Olivia had different priorities. The next morning, I got up early and made an appointment with the best pediatric oncologist on the East Coast. The receptionist told me there was a 6-month waiting list for new patients. "It's urgent," I said, my knuckles white around the phone. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but Dr. Patel is one of the top specialists in the country. Unless your child has already been diagnosed—" "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "My son's life depends on it." There was a pause on the other end. "Hold one moment." I waited, heart pounding. This was just the first step in a very long journey, but it was crucial. In my previous life, we'd gone with the doctors at the local children's hospital, competent but not exceptional. Not the kind who published groundbreaking research or had access to experimental treatments. "Mrs. Chen?" The receptionist's voice returned. "Dr. Patel has a cancellation next Thursday at 2 p.m. Can you make that?" "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, we'll be there." As I hung up, I realized I'd have to come up with a reason to take Noah to a specialist. Marcus would ask questions. The school would need an explanation for Noah's absence. But those were problems for later. Right now, all that mattered was that I'd secured an appointment that hadn't existed in my first life. The first change in a timeline I was determined to rewrite. "A specialist?" Marcus frowned, setting down his fork. "Oh, what for? Noah seems fine to me." We were having dinner, Noah already tucked into bed after an evening of playing in the backyard. I had watched him like a hawk, looking for any sign of fatigue, any hint of the illness I knew was coming. But he had been all energy and laughter, his little body strong and resilient. For now. "It's preventative," I said, the lie smooth on my tongue. The school sent home a notice about a kid who was diagnosed with leukemia. They recommended all parents get their children checked as a precaution. Marcus's frown deepened. "That seems excessive. And why this doctor in Boston? There are plenty of doctors here in Hartford." "Dr. Patel is the best," I said simply. "And when it comes to Noah, I want the best." "The best is also the most expensive," Marcus pointed out. "Our insurance probably won't cover an out-of-network specialist for a precautionary visit." There it was, the money concern. Always the money, despite the fact that we were comfortable, more than comfortable, with his salary and my income as a freelance graphic designer. "I'll pay for it out of my personal account," I said. He looked surprised. That account, money I'd inherited from my grandmother, had always been our emergency fund, untouched through the years of our marriage. In my previous life, it had eventually gone to pay for Noah's treatments when our insurance caps were reached. "Liv, I'm not saying we can't afford it. I'm just saying it seems unnecessary. Noah is healthy as a horse." I met his eyes across the table. In my first life, I would have backed down. I would have let myself be convinced that I was overreacting, that a local pediatrician was good enough. Not this time. "I've already made the appointment," I said. "We're going." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps at my firmness. Or maybe it was the first hint of resentment. Either way, he just shrugged. "Fine, but I can't take the day off to drive you to Boston. I have court." Of course he did. Just like he'd had court or meetings or client emergencies for so many of Noah's appointments in my previous life. Until the diagnosis became too serious to ignore. And even then, his appearances at the hospital had been brief, performative. "That's okay," I said. "We'll manage." And we would, without him, if necessary. That night, as Marcus slept beside me, I opened my laptop and began to research. Pediatric acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Symptoms, treatments, survival rates, clinical trials, alternative therapies, every possibility, every option that I hadn't known to consider the first time around. I was not going to be the desperate, blindsided mother again. This time, I would be prepared. This time, I would save my son. The day of Noah's appointment, I dressed him in his favorite Spider-Man t-shirt and packed a bag of snacks and small toys to keep him occupied during what I knew would be a long wait. He was excited about the road trip, unaware of my mounting anxiety as we drove the 2 hours to Boston. "Is this a regular doctor or a special doctor?" he asked from his car seat, little legs swinging. "A special one," I answered, catching his eye in the rearview mirror. But don't worry, no shots today. Just some talking and maybe looking in your ears and throat like Dr. Wilson does. Noah nodded solemnly. I'm brave anyway, I don't cry at shots. My heart squeezed. You're the bravest boy I know. Dr. Patel's office was in a gleaming medical building attached to Boston Children's Hospital. The waiting room was bright and colorful, with a fish tank along one wall and a play area filled with toys. I filled out paperwork while Noah built a tower with blocks, nodding and smiling at other parents while my stomach twisted with nerves. What would I say? How could I convince a doctor to run extensive tests on a seemingly healthy child? I couldn't tell the truth, that I had lived this before, that I knew what was coming. They'd think I was insane. Noah Chen? A nurse in blue scrubs called from a doorway. We followed her through a hallway decorated with children's artwork to an examination room. After taking Noah's vitals, she left us to wait for the doctor. Mommy, why are we really here? Noah asked suddenly, his eyes serious. Sometimes I forgot how perceptive he was. I sat beside him on the examination table. I just want to make sure you're healthy, baby. It's what moms do. He seemed to accept this, turning his attention to a children's magazine from the rack on the wall. When Dr. Patel entered, I was struck by how young she looked, early 40s perhaps, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses and a warm smile that immediately put Noah at ease. Hello, Noah, she said, crouching to his level. I'm Dr. Patel. I like your Spider-Man shirt. Noah beamed. Spider-Man is my favorite. He can stick to walls. That's a very useful skill, she agreed solemnly before turning to me. Mrs. Chen, it's nice to meet you. What brings you in today? This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. Noah's been more tired than usual, I said, the lie burning my throat. And I've noticed some bruising on his legs that seems to appear without any injury. Dr. Patel's expression shifted subtly. These were classic symptoms of leukemia, and she knew it. I had chosen my words carefully, describing exactly what would begin to happen in a few months' time. I see, she said, turning back to Noah. Mind if I take a look at those bruises? I don't have any bruises, Noah said, looking confused. My heart hammered. You did last week, remember? On your shin? Noah shrugged. I don't remember. Dr. Patel's eyes met mine, a question in them. Let's do a full exam, shall we? For the next 20 minutes, she examined Noah thoroughly, asking him questions, testing his reflexes, looking into his ears and throat. She was gentle and playful, turning the examination into a game that had Noah giggling, but I could see the shift in her demeanor. She didn't see the symptoms I had described. Noah was healthy, for now. Noah, would you like to go pick out a sticker from the nurse's station? Dr. Patel asked when she had finished. It's just down the hall. The door's open. You can't miss it. Noah looked at me and I nodded. Go ahead, baby. I'll be right here. Once he had scampered out, Dr. Patel turned to me. Mrs. Chen, I don't see any evidence of the symptoms you described. Noah appears to be a perfectly healthy 5-year-old boy. I swallowed hard. I know what I saw. She studied me for a long moment. Sometimes, as parents, our fears can make us see things that aren't there. Has there been a history of illness in your family? Or perhaps you've heard about another child with similar symptoms? This was my opening. My nephew, I lied. My sister's son. He was diagnosed with leukemia at 6. The symptoms started so subtly that by the time they realized something was wrong, I let my voice trail off, emotion making it thick. That part, at least, wasn't a lie. Dr. Patel's expression softened. I understand your concern. A family history of leukemia is certainly something we take seriously. But I want to be clear, I'm not seeing any clinical indications for extensive testing at this time. But if it would ease my mind, I pressed. She sighed. We could run some basic blood work. A CBC would show if there are any abnormalities in his blood cell counts. But I have to caution you against unnecessary medical testing, especially in children. It can be traumatic and without clinical indicators. Please, I said, my voice breaking. I need to know he's okay. Something in my face must have conveyed my desperation because after a moment she nodded. All right, we'll do a blood draw, but I want to be very clear. Based on my examination, I expect these results to come back normal. Relief flooded through me. It was a start, a baseline. And if, no, when, Noah's blood work began to show changes in the coming months, we would have something to compare it to. When Noah returned, proudly sporting a Captain America sticker on his shirt, Dr. Patel explained that they needed to take a little blood just to check that everything's working right inside. Noah's face fell. With a needle? I'm afraid so, Dr. Patel said gently. But we have a special team who are experts at making it quick and almost painless. Noah looked at me, his lower lip trembling slightly. You said no shots. Guilt twisted in my gut. I know, baby. I'm sorry, but this is important, and it'll be over before you know it. And afterward, we can get ice cream, any flavor you want. He considered this, then squared his little shoulders. Okay, but I want chocolate and strawberry, 2 scoops. I laughed, tears pricking my eyes. It's a deal. Later, as we drove home with Noah napping in the back seat, his arm sporting a bright blue bandage and his stomach full of ice cream, I felt a glimmer of hope. The blood work wouldn't show anything yet, I knew that. But I had established a relationship with Dr. Patel. I had created a record. I had taken the first step. And I would take as many more as needed to change the future. Negative for any abnormalities, Dr. Patel's voice said over the phone a week later. As I expected, Noah's blood work is perfectly normal for a child his age. I gripped the phone tighter, stepping into the backyard where Noah couldn't overhear. Are you sure? What about his white blood cell count? Within normal range, she confirmed. Mrs. Chen, these results are good news. Can I get a copy sent to me? I asked. And would it be possible to schedule a follow-up in a couple of months, just to be safe? There was a pause on the other end. You know, normally I would say that's unnecessary, but given your family history and your concerns, yes. Let's schedule a follow-up in 3 months. Sooner if you notice any actual symptoms, fatigue, unexplained bruising, frequent infections, that sort of thing. Thank you, I breathed. Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. After we hung up, I stood in the yard watching Noah through the kitchen window as he colored at the table, his tongue poking out in concentration. 3 months. If my timeline was accurate, he would still be symptom-free then. But 3 months after that, that's when it would start. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my racing heart, one step at a time. That's all I could do. Inside, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did the test results come back? I hesitated, then typed, all clear, completely healthy. His response was immediate. Good. Told you there was nothing to worry about. I didn't reply. He hadn't told me that exactly. What he'd said was that the appointment was unnecessary, excessive, a waste of money. The distinction mattered. That night, I updated my calendar with the date of Noah's follow-up appointment. As I did, another date caught my eye. One I had forgotten about in the whirlwind of focusing on Noah. Our anniversary. 7 years. In my previous life, we had gone to a fancy restaurant. Marcus had given me a pair of diamond earrings. I had worn a black dress he liked, and we had made polite conversation about nothing important. It had been pleasant enough, but looking back, I could see the cracks that were already forming. The distance neither of us acknowledged. I stared at the date on the calendar, then deliberately drew a line through it. Some things weren't worth saving. Months passed. Fall turned into winter, and I watched Noah with hawk-like attention, looking for any sign of the illness I knew was coming. But he remained energetic and happy, racing around the house in superhero costumes, building elaborate forts in the living room, begging for one more story at bedtime. Meanwhile, my relationship with Marcus grew increasingly strained. I declined invitations to dinners with his colleagues, avoided the hotel room surprises that had once been his idea of romance, and spent more time with Noah, treasuring each moment in a way Marcus couldn't understand. You're different, he said one night after I'd turned down a weekend getaway he'd planned without consulting me. Ever since that doctor's appointment with Noah, it's like you've checked out of this marriage. I looked at him across the kitchen, this man I had once loved so completely. In this timeline, he hadn't betrayed me yet, hadn't abandoned our son, hadn't filed for divorce while I sat vigil at a hospital bed. But he would, I knew he would, given the chance. Maybe I have, I said quietly. His eyes widened. This wasn't the response he had expected. In our first life, I would have apologized, would have promised to try harder, would have agreed to the weekend away. What's that supposed to mean? He demanded. I shook my head. Nothing. I'm tired, Marcus. I'm going to bed. I left him standing there, confusion and anger warring on his face. Part of me felt guilty. Was I punishing him for something he hadn't done yet? But a larger part remembered the text message, the divorce papers, the way he had walked away when Noah and I needed him most. Some betrayals transcend time. Noah's follow-up appointment with Dr. Patel came and went. Again, his blood work showed nothing abnormal, but I knew it was just a matter of time. I'd like to schedule another follow-up, I told Dr. Patel, who was beginning to look at me with a mixture of concern and puzzlement. Mrs. Chen, she said gently, Noah is thriving. At some point, we have to accept that he's not going to develop the same illness as your nephew. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Dr. Patel couldn't understand. No one could. 3 more months, she finally agreed. But unless something changes, that will be our last routine checkup until his annual physical. 3 more months would put us in late May, close to when the symptoms had first appeared in my previous life. Thank you, I said. I appreciate your understanding. As we left the hospital, Noah tugged on my hand. Are we going for ice cream again? I smiled down at him. Absolutely. 2 scoops, right? He grinned, revealing the gap where another baby tooth had fallen out. 3, I laughed. Don't push your luck, mister. As we sat in the ice cream parlor, Noah happily demolishing a sundae that did indeed have 3 scoops, I was a pushover and we both knew it. I found myself studying his face, committing every detail to memory. The curve of his cheek, the dimple when he smiled, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners just like mine. In my first life, there had been too many moments I took for granted. Too many times I was distracted by work or errands or the minutiae of daily life. I had loved Noah with every fiber of my being, but I hadn't always been present. Not this time. This time, I was savoring every second. Mommy, why are you looking at me like that? Noah asked, ice cream smeared on his chin. Because I love you, I said simply, more than anything in the world. He rolled his eyes in that dramatic way only children can manage. I know that. You tell me like 100 times a day. And I'll tell you 100 more, I promised. Now finish your ice cream. We have a play date with Emma, remember? Emma was the daughter of my friend Claire, a woman who had been my rock during Noah's illness in my previous life. In this timeline, we were still just casual friends, our kids in the same kindergarten class. But I had been making a point of nurturing that friendship, knowing how vital it would become. Can Emma come to my birthday party? Noah asked. His birthday, July 10th. In my first life, we had celebrated his 6th birthday in the hospital, a sad affair with a store-bought cake and a few balloons. Noah had been too sick to enjoy it, just days after his diagnosis. Of course she can, I said. We're going to have the best birthday party ever. If everything went according to my plan, we would be celebrating his birthday very differently this time. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this, Marcus said, his voice rising. It's one weekend. Your mother already said she'd watch Noah. We were standing in our bedroom, Marcus packing for a partners retreat that conveniently included spouses. A weekend at a luxury resort in the Hamptons, all expenses paid by the firm. In my first life, I had gone. I had smiled and networked and played the supportive wife, all while secretly counting the hours until we could go home to Noah. I told you, I don't want to leave Noah right now, I said. Marcus threw a pair of socks into his suitcase with more force than necessary. He's fine, Olivia. The doctor has said so multiple times. This obsession you have isn't healthy. I stiffened. It's not an obsession to prioritize my child. Our child, he corrected. And part of taking care of him is making sure I succeed in my career so we can provide for him. There it was again. The career. Always the career. Then go, I said. Enjoy your weekend, but I'm staying with Noah. He stared at me, frustration evident in every line of his body. What is going on with you? Ever since last summer, you've been like a different person. Distant, cold. It's like you're looking for reasons to push me away. I almost laughed. He thought I was the cold one? He had no idea what coldness truly was. He hadn't felt it seep into his bones as he sat alone beside a hospital bed, watching their child suffer while his husband moved on with his life. Maybe I'm just seeing things clearly for the first time, I said. Meaning what exactly? I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had married, filled with ambition and charm. The man who had swept me off my feet, who had promised forever, who had cried when he first held Noah in his arms, the man who would leave us when we needed him most. Nothing, I said. Just go to your retreat, Marcus. We'll talk when you get back. He zipped his suitcase closed with a sharp movement. Fine, but this conversation isn't over. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, a strange emptiness inside me. There had been a time when I loved him so deeply it hurt, when I thought we were building something unbreakable. Now all I felt was a hollow resignation and the certainty that some things couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals ran too deep, even if they hadn't happened yet in this timeline. I picked up my phone and opened my calendar. Noah's next appointment with Dr. Patel was in 3 weeks. If my memory was correct, that was when we would begin to see the first signs. I was ready. The call from Noah's school came on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week before his scheduled appointment with Dr. Patel. Mrs. Chen? This is Nurse Abrams from Lakeside Elementary. Noah's running a fever, and he says his legs hurt. I think you should come pick him up. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. It was happening, just like before. I'll be right there, I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the panic clawing at my throat. Noah was lying on a cot in the nurse's office when I arrived, his normally rosy cheeks flushed with fever. When he saw me, he held out his arms like he used to do as a toddler, wanting to be carried. Mommy, I don't feel good, he said, his voice small. I gathered him against me, feeling the heat of his skin through his thin t-shirt. I know, baby. We're going to go home and make you all better. But I didn't take him home. I drove straight to the emergency room, calling Dr. Patel's office on the way. He's presenting with symptoms, I told the receptionist, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Fever, bone pain. I need to speak with Dr. Patel immediately. The receptionist must have heard the urgency in my voice because Dr. Patel called me back within minutes. Bring him to Boston Children's, she said after I explained the symptoms. I'll call ahead to the ER. They'll be expecting you. The next 12 hours were a blur of tests, questions, and mounting dread. Noah, brave as always, endured blood draws and examinations with minimal complaints, though I could see the fear in his eyes. Am I really sick? He asked as we waited for results, cuddled together on a hospital bed, a cartoon playing on the TV mounted to the wall. I stroked his hair, fighting back tears. The doctors are figuring that out. But no matter what, I'm going to be right here with you, always. He nodded, accepting this as only children can, and turned his attention back to the cartoon. I, meanwhile, was living in 2 timelines at once. The present, where we waited for a diagnosis I already knew was coming, and the past future, where that same diagnosis had destroyed our lives. When Dr. Patel finally entered the room, her face grave, I knew. Mrs. Chen, could I speak with you outside for a moment? She asked quietly. I kissed Noah's forehead. I'll be right back, sweetie. Keep watching your show, okay? In the hallway, Dr. Patel didn't waste time with gentle preambles. The preliminary blood work shows abnormalities consistent with leukemia. We'll need to do a bone marrow aspiration to confirm, but... It's acute lymphoblastic leukemia, I said, my voice hollow. Isn't it? She looked surprised. That's our primary suspicion, yes. We won't know for certain until... How soon can we start treatment? I cut in. I've been researching. There are new protocols, experimental treatments. A clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering using modified T cells that's showing promising results. Dr. Patel studied me, confusion evident in her expression. Mrs. Chen, I understand this is overwhelming, but we need to confirm the diagnosis before discussing treatment options. How long will that take? I pressed. Every day matters with all. The sooner we start treatment, the better his chances. You seem unusually well-informed, she said carefully. I took a deep breath. I couldn't tell her the truth, that I had lived through this nightmare once before, that I knew exactly what was coming. She would think I was having a psychological break. My nephew, I reminded her, the lie now familiar on my tongue. I've done my research since then. I wanted to be prepared, just in case. She nodded slowly. We'll schedule the bone marrow aspiration for first thing tomorrow morning. If it confirms all, we'll discuss treatment options immediately. I promise you, Mrs. Chen, we will move as quickly as possible. I want to be transferred to Sloan Kettering, I said, for the clinical trial. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she cautioned. First, we need a confirmed diagnosis. Then we need to determine the specific subtype of leukemia, if that's indeed what we're dealing with. Not all patients qualify for experimental treatments, but I knew Noah would qualify. In my previous life, we had been offered the chance to join that same trial at Sloan Kettering, 6 months into his treatment, when the standard protocols weren't working well enough. By then, it had been too late. His disease had progressed too far, not this time. I understand, I said, but please start the process. If it is all, I want him in that trial. Dr. Patel's expression softened. I'll make some calls. For now, try to stay calm for Noah's sake. We'll know more tomorrow. When I returned to Noah's room, he had fallen asleep, the cartoon still playing softly in the background. I sat beside his bed, gently stroking his hair, and pulled out my phone. Noah's in the hospital, I texted Marcus. Doctors suspect leukemia. Test tomorrow morning. His response came almost immediately. What? Are you serious? Which hospital? Boston Children's, room 412, and I'm in court all day tomorrow. Major case. Can't postpone. We'll try to come after. I stared at the message, a bitter laugh rising in my throat. Some things never changed, it seemed. Even with different circumstances, Marcus's priorities remained the same. Don't bother, I typed, then deleted it. Fine, I sent instead. I set the phone aside and focused on my son, memorizing the peaceful rise and fall of his chest, the flutter of his eyelashes against his cheeks. The coming months would be hard, brutal even. But this time, I was prepared. This time, I knew which treatments worked best, which doctors to trust, which clinical trials to pursue. This time, I would save him, and I would do it without Marcus. The bone marrow aspiration confirmed what I already knew, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the same monster that had stolen my child once before. But this time, things were different. Dr. Patel, true to her word, had reached out to her colleagues at Sloan Kettering. Noah's specific genetic markers made him a candidate for the clinical trial, the one that, in my previous life, had come too late. It's highly experimental, Dr. Barnes, the lead researcher on the trial, explained via video conference. But the preliminary results are promising. The modified T cells have shown remarkable efficacy in patients with this particular genetic subtype. How soon can we start? I asked, the same question I'd been asking everyone. We have an opening next week, he said. But I should warn you, Mrs. Chen, this isn't a replacement for standard chemotherapy. It's a supplement. Your son will still need to undergo traditional treatment with all its side effects. I understand, I said. We'll be there. Marcus arrived at the hospital just as the video conference ended. He looked harried, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed with what appeared to be genuine concern. How is he? He asked, glancing at Noah, who was dozing after his procedure. He has leukemia, I said bluntly. We're transferring to a hospital in New York next week for a clinical trial. Marcus blinked, clearly struggling to process. New York? Wait, slow down. Shouldn't we get a second opinion? Talk to doctors here in Connecticut? I've already gotten second, third, and fourth opinions, I said. This trial is his best chance. Liv, be reasonable. I can't commute to New York every day. My job? Your job, I echoed, a cold fury rising inside me. Our son has cancer, Marcus. Cancer. And you're worried about your commute? He had the grace to look ashamed. That's not what I meant. Of course, Noah's health comes first, but uprooting our entire lives on the recommendation of one doctor seems extreme. It's not extreme, it's necessary. And what about my input? He demanded. I'm his father, don't I get a say in his medical decisions? I looked at him. This man who, in another life, had walked away when things got hard, who had prioritized his comfort, his career, his new relationship over his dying child. No, I said simply. You don't? The shock on his face almost made me laugh. He wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't bend, didn't accommodate, didn't put his needs first. Olivia, what the hell is going on with you? You've been different for months, and now this isn't like you at all. Maybe you never really knew me, I said, turning back to Noah. Maybe it took a crisis for me to figure out who I really am. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. I'm going to get some coffee. We'll talk when I get back. But we didn't talk. Not really. When he returned, I was focused on Noah, who had woken up asking for water, confused about where he was. Marcus stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed, watching as I comforted our son, explained in simple terms what was happening, promised him that everything would be okay. Later, when Noah drifted off again, Marcus tried once more. Liv, I know you're scared. I am too. But we need to be a team on this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man who would abandon us when things got even harder than they were now. I'll be in New York with Noah starting next week, I said. You can come visit when your schedule allows. Something hardened in his expression. This isn't how a marriage works. You can't just make unilateral decisions about our family. Watch me, I said, turning away. He left an hour later, muttering about needing to process and make arrangements. I knew he was angry, confused, hurt. I knew this wasn't the wife he had married. But she was gone. She had died in a hospital room reading a text message about divorce papers, and I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations. Medical records were transferred, accommodations near Sloan Kettering were arranged, Noah's school was notified. I took a leave of absence from my freelance work and dipped into my inheritance to cover the costs not covered by insurance. Marcus, to my mild surprise, had arranged for a month of family leave from his firm. He'd rented a small apartment in Manhattan, not far from the hospital. We're in this together, he told me the night before we were set to leave, his voice firm. I know you're angry with me about something, though God knows what. But Noah needs both his parents right now. I looked at him across our kitchen, this man who was trying so hard to be the father he thought he was. Part of me, a small, weak part, wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that in this timeline, with an earlier diagnosis and a different approach, Marcus would rise to the occasion. But I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk Noah's heart being broken alongside his body. Fine, I said. But understand this. Noah's treatment comes first. Everything else is secondary. He nodded, relief evident in his face. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. The next morning, we drove to New York, Noah sitting between us in the back seat, a hired driver taking us so we could both focus on our son. Noah was subdued, still processing the confusing and frightening changes in his young life. Will it hurt? He asked in a small voice as the city skyline came into view. Some parts might, I said honestly, but the doctors are going to do everything they can to make it easier. And I'll be right there with you, always. He leaned against me, seeking comfort. Promise. I promise, baby. Nothing will ever keep me away from you. Over his head, I caught Marcus's gaze. Something passed between us, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of the gravity of what we were facing. Or maybe it was just my imagination, projecting meaning onto a man I no longer trusted. Either way, as we pulled up to the hospital that would become our second home for the foreseeable future, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. This time, I was going to win. The first month of Noah's treatment was brutal, just as I had known it would be. The chemotherapy ravaged his little body, leaving him weak, nauseated, his immune system compromised. The experimental T-cell therapy brought its own complications. Fevers that spiked dangerously high, temporary neurological effects that left him confused and frightened. Through it all, I never left his side. I slept in a chair beside his bed, memorized his medication schedule better than the nurses, advocated fiercely when protocols weren't followed to my satisfaction. Marcus, to his credit, was present more than he had been in my previous life. He came to the hospital every day after work, spent weekends reading to Noah or playing gentle games when our son felt up to it. He brought me coffee, urged me to take breaks, tried to share the burden. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough to erase what I knew he was capable of. You need to sleep in a real bed tonight, he said one evening, about 6 weeks into Noah's treatment. You're running yourself into the ground. I'll stay with him. I shook my head, not looking up from the medical journal I was reading. I'm fine here. Olivia. His voice held an edge of frustration. You're not fine. You've lost weight. You barely sleep. You snap at the nurses. This isn't sustainable. I finally looked at him, taking in his concerned expression. In this timeline, he was trying. I could acknowledge that much, but it didn't change what I knew. I said I'm fine, I repeated. Noah needs me here. He needs you healthy, Marcus countered. And he needs his father, too. But you've been shutting me out at every turn. I closed the journal with a snap. I haven't prevented you from seeing him. Physically, no. But emotionally, you've made it clear you don't want me involved in decisions. You talk to the doctors without me. You rearrange his treatment schedule without telling me. Because I'm the one who's here all the time, I said. I'm the one who sees how he responds to each treatment. Who knows when he's having a good day or a bad day? I'm the one who... Who what? Marcus challenged when I cut myself off. Who loves him more? Is that what you were going to say? The accusation hung in the air between us. In my first life, I would have denied it, would have soothed his ego, assured him we were equal parents. But that Olivia was gone. Who won't leave when it gets too hard, I said instead, my voice low but steady. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. What the hell is that supposed to mean? When have I ever left? I'm here, Olivia. Every day, I'm here. For now, I agreed. But what about when the treatments stretch on for months? When there are setbacks? When your boss starts making comments about your family situation affecting your work? His face paled. Has Kevin said something to you? I laughed, a bitter sound. He doesn't have to. I know exactly who Kevin Preston is, and I know exactly who you are, Marcus. I don't think you do, he said, his voice tight with anger. Because the woman I married wouldn't accuse me of planning to abandon our sick child. The woman I married wouldn't treat me like the enemy. Maybe the woman you married finally woke up, I shot back. We glared at each other, the beeping of Noah's monitors the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. Thankfully, our son was sleeping, exhausted from his latest round of treatment. I'm going to get some air, Marcus finally said, turning toward the door. Call me if anything changes. After he left, I sank back into my chair, the anger draining away, leaving only a bone-deep weariness. This constant vigilance, against the cancer, against Marcus, against the future I was determined to change, was exhausting, but I couldn't afford to rest, not yet, not until Noah was safe. 3 months into Noah's treatment, the first glimmer of hope appeared. His blood counts were improving. The leukemia cells were retreating. The experimental therapy was working, just as the doctors had cautiously predicted it might. This is very promising, Dr. Barnes said, reviewing Noah's latest test results. He's responding to treatment faster than most patients with his subtype. Of course, we still have a long road ahead, but it's working. I finished for him, tears of relief burning my eyes. It appears to be, yes. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from the normally reserved physician. I don't want to give you false hope, Mrs. Chen. Leukemia is tricky. There can be setbacks. But Noah is doing remarkably well. I nodded, too overcome to speak. In my previous life, at this same 3-month mark, Noah had been deteriorating, the standard treatments barely making a dent in his aggressive cancer. The difference was stark, miraculous. Later that evening, when Noah was sleeping and Marcus had gone back to his apartment for the night, I sat beside the window, looking out at the lights of Manhattan. For the first time since I'd awakened in this second chance, I allowed myself to truly believe that I might succeed, that I might save my son. The door opened quietly behind me, and I turned, expecting a nurse doing rounds. Instead, Marcus stood there, holding a small gift bag. I thought you'd gone home, I said, surprised. I forgot my laptop, he explained, setting the bag on the table beside Noah's bed. And I wanted to leave this for when he wakes up. It's a new Spider-Man action figure, the one he was talking about last week. I nodded, oddly touched by the gesture. He'll love it. Marcus lingered, his eyes on our sleeping son. Dr. Barnes called me, told me about the test results. He shouldn't have done that without my permission, I said automatically. Marcus sighed. I'm still Noah's father, Olivia. I'm still listed on his medical forms. And despite what you seem to believe, I care about his treatment. I didn't respond, turning back to the window. The doctor also mentioned something else. Marcus continued after a moment. He said you've been asking about transferring Noah's care back to Connecticut once this phase of treatment is complete. Is that true? I stiffened. I had indeed been making inquiries, planning for the next phase of Noah's recovery, and for my eventual separation from Marcus. In my first life, I had stayed in a broken marriage for far too long, believing it was best for Noah. This time, I knew better. Yes, I said simply. The acute phase of treatment will be finished soon. The maintenance phase can be managed closer to home. Our home, Marcus said, emphasis on the our. The one we share, together. I finally turned to face him. I'm not sure that's going to work anymore. He stared at me, a muscle jumping in his jaw. You're talking about divorce. It wasn't a question. Yes, I said. I think that's for the best. For the best? He repeated incredulously. Our son is battling cancer, and you think divorce is for the best. Lower your voice, I hissed, glancing at Noah. You'll wake him. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. Olivia, this is insane. Whatever issues we have, we can work through them. Couples therapy, time away together, whatever it takes. But breaking up our family in the middle of Noah's illness? That's the last thing he needs. What he needs is stability, I countered. And that's what I'm going to give him. In Connecticut. Without you. Without, he broke off, disbelief written across his features. You can't be serious. You can't just take my son away. Watch me, I said, echoing my words from months ago. Marcus's expression hardened. No, I won't let you do this. I won't let you use Noah's illness as an excuse to cut me out of his life. It's not an excuse, I said. It's a reason, a damn good one. What reason? He demanded. What have I done that's so unforgivable? I've been here every day. I've taken leave from work. I've supported you both financially and emotionally. What more do you want from me? I looked at him. This version of Marcus who hadn't yet committed the betrayal that had shattered my world. This Marcus who was trying, in his limited way, to be the father and husband he thought he was. But intentions weren't enough. Not when I knew what he was capable of. I want you to let us go, I said quietly, without a fight, without dragging Noah through a custody battle on top of everything else he's dealing with. Marcus stared at me, something shifting in his expression. You've changed, he said finally. I don't know when or how, but you're not the woman I married. The Olivia I knew would never do this. He was right, of course. That Olivia was gone, replaced by a woman who had watched her child suffer and die, who had been abandoned in her darkest hour, who had been given an impossible second chance. People change, I said simply. Sometimes they have to. He shook his head, a mixture of anger and bewilderment on his face. This isn't over, he said, moving toward the door. I'm not giving up on our family that easily. After he left, I returned to my vigil beside Noah's bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. He looked better than he had in weeks. Some color returning to his cheeks, his breathing easier. The treatment was working. My plan was working. All I had to do now was hold the line against Marcus. 2 weeks later, I was in the cafeteria, forcing down a sandwich at the insistence of one of the nurses, when my phone lit up with a text from Marcus. We need to talk, now, lawyer's office. I frowned, setting down the sandwich. I'm not leaving Noah. It's important. Nurse said he's sleeping. 20 minutes tops. Address below. An address in Midtown followed. Reluctantly, I texted the nurse who had been with Noah all morning. She confirmed he was resting comfortably and promised to call immediately if he woke. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a sleek conference room facing Marcus and a sharp-looking woman in a tailored suit. Mrs. Chen, she said, extending her hand. I'm Erica Soto, Mr. Chen's attorney. I didn't take her hand. What is this about? Marcus's face was grim. I'm filing for primary custody of Noah. I'm also contesting your intent to move him back to Connecticut. The words hit me like a physical blow. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious, he said. I've tried reasoning with you. I've tried understanding whatever it is you're going through, but I won't let you take my son away. I turned to the lawyer. My son is in the middle of cancer treatment. You're really going to put him through a custody battle right now? Erica Soto's expression remained professional. We're hoping it won't come to that, Mrs. Chen. A reasonable joint custody arrangement. No, I cut her off. Not happening. Marcus leaned forward. Olivia, be reasonable. I'm not trying to take Noah from you. I'm just making sure I remain part of his life. I laughed, a harsh sound. Now who's being unreasonable? You really think a judge is going to separate a child from the mother who has been by his side through cancer treatment? Who has coordinated every aspect of his care? Who has quite literally not left his side for months? A judge might consider that level of intensity concerning, Erica Soto suggested mildly. There's such a thing as being too involved, Mrs. Chen, and your apparent determination to exclude your husband from medical decisions does raise questions about your co-parenting abilities. My hands clenched into fists beneath the table. This is a waste of time. I'm going back to my son. Olivia, wait, Marcus said as I stood. Please. I don't want to do this through lawyers. I'm just trying to protect my relationship with Noah. I stared down at him, this man who had once promised to love me forever, who had abandoned us once and would do it again if given the chance. You know what's interesting? I said, my voice deceptively calm. You're so worried about your relationship with Noah, but not once have you asked about saving our marriage. Not once have you suggested couples counseling or working on us. Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by this change in direction. I thought that ship had sailed. You made it pretty clear you wanted a divorce. I do, I confirmed. But it's telling that you accepted that so easily while fighting tooth and nail for Noah. Almost like Noah is the only one you really care about. A flush crept up his neck. That's not fair. Of course I care about you, but you've made it impossible to reach you. You shut me out months ago, long before Noah got sick. And did you ever wonder why? Yes, every day. But you never gave me answers, just cryptic comments and cold shoulders. I studied him, searching for any sign that this version of Marcus was truly different from the one who had abandoned us. But all I saw was the same self-righteous indignation, the same inability to truly see me or understand what I needed. Here's your answer, I said finally. I saw you, the real you, and I decided I deserved better. With that, I walked out, ignoring his calls for me to wait, to explain, to come back and be reasonable. As I hurried back to the hospital, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from Marcus, but instead it was from Claire, my friend from Connecticut. How's our little superhero doing? Thinking of you both. I paused on the sidewalk, suddenly overwhelmed by how alone I'd been in this fight. Yes, Marcus had been physically present, but emotionally, I'd been isolated, carrying the weight of 2 timelines, of knowledge I couldn't share, of a desperate mission to save my son. He's doing better, I typed back. Treatment's working. Could use a friend, though. Her response was immediate. On the next train. Text me the hospital address. For the first time in weeks, I felt something loosen in my chest. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I just needed to remember that. When I reached Noah's room, he was awake, coloring in a Spider-Man book, his nurse helping him stay within the lines. "Mommy!" he exclaimed, his face lighting up. Despite the weight loss, the pallor, the thinness of his hair, his smile was still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Look what I made for you." He held up a slightly wobbly drawing of what appeared to be the 2 of us, stick figures holding hands, a bright sun overhead. "It's beautiful, baby," I said, taking the picture and kissing the top of his head. "The most beautiful picture ever." "Where's Daddy?" he asked, returning to his coloring. "He said he'd bring me a new game today." I hesitated, unsure what to say. Despite everything, I didn't want to turn Noah against his father. That wasn't fair to either of them. "Daddy had to work," I said finally. "But guess what? Auntie Claire is coming to visit. She'll be here soon." Noah's face lit up. "Really? Can she bring Emma?" "Not this time, sweetie. Emma has school, but maybe next visit." He nodded, accepting this with the resilience children so often show. "Okay. Can we show Auntie Claire my cool hospital room and my Spider-Man collection?" "Absolutely," I promised. "We can show her everything." As Noah chattered happily about all the things he wanted to show Claire, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus could hire all the lawyers he wanted. He could file whatever papers he thought would frighten me into compliance, but he would never win. Because unlike him, I knew what was at stake. I knew what the future held if I faltered, and I was never going to let that future come to pass. Claire's visit was exactly what I needed. A breath of fresh air in the sterile hospital environment. A friend who knew me before, who didn't question my devotion to Noah, or why I was holding Marcus at arm's length. "He's actually filing for custody," she asked incredulously as we sat in the hospital cafeteria, taking a rare break while Noah napped. "In the middle of everything Noah's going through?" I nodded, sipping the decent coffee she'd brought from outside. "He says he just wants to ensure he remains part of Noah's life when we return to Connecticut." Claire snorted. "As if you've ever tried to keep them apart. You're the one who's been pushing him to be more involved since Noah was born." This was true, I realized. In both timelines, I had been the one encouraging Marcus to attend school functions, to take Noah on father-son outings, to build the relationship I thought was so important. Until I discovered exactly what kind of father he really was. "He's different now," I said vaguely, "more interested in being a dad." "Yeah, now that he thinks you might take Noah away," Claire said skeptically. "Convenient timing." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I just want what's best for Noah, and right now, that means focusing on his treatment, not fighting with Marcus." Claire reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're doing an amazing job, Liv. Noah is lucky to have you." Tears pricked at my eyes. "Thanks. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm making the right decisions." "Trust your gut," she advised. "You know Noah better than anyone. Better than Marcus, better than the doctors. You know what he needs." I did know. I knew in a way no one else could possibly understand. I had watched Noah die once. I would not let it happen again, no matter what or who I had to sacrifice in the process. A week after Claire's visit, Dr. Barnes delivered the news we'd been waiting for. "The latest bone marrow aspiration shows no detectable leukemia cells," he said, a rare smile breaking through his professional demeanor. "Noah is in remission." The word hit me like a physical blow, remission. In my previous life, we had never reached this milestone. Noah had never gone into remission, his cancer proving stubbornly resistant to treatment after treatment. But this time, with the clinical trial, with the earlier diagnosis, with all my foreknowledge, this time, we had beaten it. "What happens next?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "We'll continue with the treatment protocol for the full course," Dr. Barnes explained. "Remission doesn't mean cured. There could still be cancer cells we can't detect. But this is an extremely positive sign. Noah is responding exceptionally well." I looked at my son, playing with a puzzle on his bed, oblivious to the momentous news. 6 months of hell and finally, a light at the end of the tunnel. "When can we go home?" I asked. Dr. Barnes hesitated. "Noah's immune system is still compromised. He'll need to continue treatment for at least another month here, where we can monitor him closely. After that, we can discuss transferring his care to a hospital closer to home for the maintenance phase." A month. I could do a month. And then we would go back to Connecticut. Not to the home I had shared with Marcus, but somewhere new. A fresh start for Noah and me. When Marcus arrived that evening, I was still floating on the news of Noah's remission. "Did Dr. Barnes tell you?" I asked, the first words I'd spoken directly to him in days. Marcus nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "He called me right after he told you. It's incredible news." Without warning, he pulled me into a hug. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself lean into him, remembering the comfort we had once shared, the partnership I had once believed in. Then, I stiffened and stepped back. "Noah's playing in the activity room down the hall. He's been asking for you." Marcus studied me, a mixture of emotions playing across his face. "Olivia, can we talk? Really talk? No lawyers, no accusations, just us." I hesitated. Part of me, a small, weak part, wanted to give him a chance to explain, to defend himself against crimes he hadn't yet committed in this timeline. But the larger part, the part that remembered the text message about divorce papers, couldn't bear the thought of opening myself up to him again. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "Noah's in remission. In a month, we'll be transferring back to Connecticut. You can visit him there according to whatever custody arrangement the courts decide." His expression hardened. "So that's it? You've made up your mind? There's no chance for us to work through this?" "There's nothing to work through," I said. "It's over, Marcus. It has been for a long time. You just didn't notice." "That's not fair," he protested. "I've been trying for months to understand what changed, what I did wrong. But you shut me out completely. How am I supposed to fix something when I don't even know what's broken?" For a moment, I was tempted to tell him. To say, in another life, you abandoned me and our dying son. You filed for divorce while I sat at his hospital bed. You broke every vow we ever made. But he wouldn't believe me, and even if he did, it wouldn't change anything. Because even if this Marcus wouldn't make the same choices, and I had no reason to believe he wouldn't, the damage was already done. I had already lived through his betrayal. I could never trust him again. "Go see your son," I said instead. "He's the only thing that matters now." Marcus stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once, his jaw tight. "This isn't over, Olivia. I'm not giving up on us that easily." After he left, I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The elation of Noah's remission was dampened by the reality of what still lay ahead. Not just the continued medical challenges, but the legal battle with Marcus. But I would face it all. Because Noah was going to live. Noah was going to grow up, go to school, have a future. And no one, not Marcus, not cancer, not fate itself, was going to take that away from him. The next month passed in a blur of final treatments, preparations for transfer, and increasingly tense interactions with Marcus. His lawyer had filed formal papers contesting my plan to move back to Connecticut with Noah, arguing that it would disrupt the parental bond during a critical phase of Noah's recovery. My own lawyer, recommended by Claire, paid for with what remained of my inheritance, argued that as the primary caregiver, my decisions regarding Noah's medical care should take precedence. The fight was ugly, expensive, and exactly what I had hoped to avoid. "Marcus, please," I said one evening, catching him alone in the hospital corridor. "This legal battle isn't good for anyone, especially Noah. Can't we work something out between us?" He leaned against the wall, looking tired. The past months had taken their toll on him, too, I realized. There were new lines around his eyes, a wariness in his posture that hadn't been there before. "Work something out?" he repeated. "I've been trying to do that for months, Olivia, but you've made it clear you don't want me in your life. The problem is, I'm not willing to be cut out of Noah's life, too." "I've never said you can't see Noah," I protested. "I just think it's best if you take him back to Connecticut and I stay here," Marcus finished for me. "With me getting what? Weekend visits? Holidays? That's not being a father. That's being a visitor." I sighed, trying to find the right words. Noah needs stability. He needs to return to his school, his friends. He needs a normal life after everything he's been through. "And he needs his father," Marcus insisted. "Every day, not just when it's convenient for you." A nurse walked past, glancing curiously at us, and I lowered my voice. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "It never is," Marcus said bitterly. "There's always some reason you can't talk to me. Noah's awake. Noah's asleep. You're tired. You're busy. When are we supposed to figure this out, Olivia?" He had a point, I realized reluctantly. I had been avoiding this conversation, hoping that somehow we could bypass it entirely, that Marcus would simply accept my decisions without question, the way he had so often in our first life. But this Marcus was fighting back. This Marcus wasn't willing to be sidelined, to be the absent father who showed up for birthdays and holidays and then disappeared back into his own life. And despite everything, despite the betrayal that burned in my memory, I couldn't hate him for that. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow. Noah has physical therapy in the morning. We can talk then." Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you. I'll be here." I nodded and turned to go back to Noah's room, but Marcus caught my arm gently. "Liv," he said softly. "I still love you. I don't know what happened between us. what I did to make you turn away from me, but I still love you, and I'm still fighting for our family." I met his eyes, remembering all the times in our first life when I had longed to hear those words, when I had lain awake in that hospital chair praying for Marcus to show up, to be the husband and father I needed him to be. But it was too late. 6 years too late. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said, pulling my arm away. Noah was released from the hospital a week later, his treatment officially transferred to Connecticut Children's Medical Center for the maintenance phase. The custody battle remained unresolved, with a temporary arrangement that allowed Marcus to have Noah 3 days a week. A compromise that satisfied neither of us, but that the judge had insisted upon while the case proceeded. I rented a small house in West Hartford, not far from Noah's school and the hospital. Marcus, true to his word, had found an apartment nearby, commuting to his New York office 3 days a week and working remotely the rest of the time. It was an uneasy piece, this co-parenting arrangement neither of us had wanted. But for Noah's sake, we made it work. And Noah was thriving. His strength was returning, his hair growing back, his spirit as resilient as ever. He still had monthly treatments, still needed extra precautions to protect his immune system, but he was alive. He was in remission, he was defying the fate that had claimed him in my previous life. Every day, I marveled at the miracle of it, this second chance, this opportunity to rewrite the most painful chapter of my existence. 6 months after Noah's release from the hospital, I sat across from Marcus in a mediator's office, both our lawyers present as we hammered out the details of our divorce settlement. "Mr. Chen is still contesting the custody arrangement," his lawyer stated. "He believes strongly that equal shared custody is in Noah's best interest now that his condition has stabilized." My lawyer, Diane, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, shook her head. "Mrs. Chen has been Noah's primary caretaker throughout his illness. The current arrangement of Mr. Chen having Noah 3 days a week is already generous given the circumstances." The mediator, a kindly older man with a perpetually neutral expression, made a note. "And what are your personal feelings on this matter, Mrs. Chen?" I glanced at Marcus, who was watching me intently. Over the past months, I had seen him step up as a father in ways he never had in our first life. He was consistent, attentive, fully engaged in Noah's recovery. He never missed a doctor's appointment, even when it meant rescheduling important meetings. He had learned Noah's medication schedule, his dietary restrictions, his exercise regimen. In short, he was being the father I had always wanted him to be, the father I had never thought he could be, and yet, "I believe the current arrangement is working," I said carefully. "Noah needs consistency right now, and disrupting his routine could be detrimental to his recovery." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The mediation continued, moving on to financial matters, division of assets, child support. Through it all, I felt Marcus's gaze on me, questioning, challenging, seeking answers I couldn't give. Later, as we walked to the parking lot, he fell into step beside me. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "And will you give me an honest answer for once?" I slowed my pace, sensing this wasn't a conversation I could avoid. "What is it?" "If Noah hadn't gotten sick," he said, "would you still have left me?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on Noah's illness, on preventing the tragedy of my first life, that I had never considered what might have happened if Noah had never gotten sick at all. Would I have stayed with Marcus, ignorant of his capacity for betrayal? Would we have continued our comfortable, if somewhat distant, marriage? Would I have ever known what he was truly capable of? "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe not." Something flickered in his eyes, hope perhaps, or resignation. So it was Noah's illness that changed everything. "In a way," I said, choosing my words carefully, "it showed me what was really important, what and who I could count on." "And you decided you couldn't count on me," he finished, "before I even had a chance to prove otherwise." I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. How could I explain that in my mind he had already failed that test? That I was judging him for actions he hadn't committed, might never commit in this timeline? "It's not that simple," I said finally. "Then explain it to me," he urged. "Because I've spent the last year trying to understand what happened to us, and I'm still in the dark." I took a deep breath, searching for a truth I could share that wouldn't sound insane. I had a realization about who you are, who I am, what our marriage really was. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. What did you see? He pressed. That when things get really hard, truly devastatingly hard, you would choose yourself. I said quietly. Your comfort, your career, your happiness over Noah, over me. His face flushed with anger. That's not fair. You never gave me the chance to prove otherwise. You decided I would fail before the test even began. Maybe, I conceded, but I couldn't take that risk, not with Noah's life at stake. We had reached our cars, parked side by side in the lot. Marcus turned to face me, his expression a complex mixture of frustration, hurt, and something I couldn't quite identify. I'm picking Noah up from school tomorrow, he said, changing the subject abruptly. Do you need me to get anything for him? Medication? Snacks? The mundane question after our intense conversation threw me, but I recovered quickly. No, we're all set. Just remember he has a doctor's appointment on Friday. I can text you the details. He nodded. I'll be there. Then, after a pause, he asked me last night if we were ever going to live in the same house again. All three of us. My heart clenched. We had explained the separation to Noah as best we could, emphasizing that both his parents loved him and that the divorce had nothing to do with him. But of course he would wonder, would hope for a reconciliation. What did you tell him? I asked. The truth, Marcus said, that I don't know, that it's complicated, that sometimes grown-ups have problems they can't fix, but that doesn't change how much we love him. I nodded, relieved he hadn't made promises we couldn't keep or blamed me for the situation. Good, I said. That's a good answer. We stood there awkwardly for a moment, two people who had once shared everything now struggling to navigate the most basic conversation. I should go, I said finally. I have a deadline for a project. Marcus nodded. Right, I'll see you Friday at the doctor's. As I drove home, his words echoed in my mind. You decided I would fail before the test even began. Was he right? Had I condemned him for a betrayal he might never have committed in this timeline? But then I remembered the text message, the divorce papers, the empty chair beside Noah's hospital bed. The nights I had spent alone, watching our son struggle to breathe, praying for a miracle while Marcus built a new life without us. No, I hadn't been wrong to protect Noah, to protect myself. Some betrayals cut too deep to risk a second time. Noah's 7th birthday arrived on a perfect summer day, blue skies and gentle breezes, nothing like the sterile hospital room where we had marked this milestone in my first life. We celebrated with a small party in the backyard of my rented house, a few friends from school, Claire and Emma, Marcus and me. Make a wish, birthday boy, I encouraged as Noah prepared to blow out the candles on his Spider-Man cake. He squeezed his eyes shut, his face a mask of concentration, then blew with all his might. Everyone cheered as the candles went out, and Noah beamed with pride. What did you wish for? Emma asked eagerly. He can't tell or it won't come true, Claire reminded her daughter. Noah shot me a secretive smile. It's okay. I can say a little bit. I wished for something for my family. My heart stuttered. That's a nice wish, baby. Later, after the other children had gone home and Noah was showing Emma his new toys in his room, I found myself alone with Marcus and Claire on the patio. He looks amazing, Claire said, watching through the window as Noah demonstrated his new action figure to an attentive Emma. You'd never know what he's been through. Kids are resilient, Marcus said, more than we give them credit for. I nodded, sipping my lemonade. The doctors are thrilled with his progress. If he stays in remission for another year, they'll consider him officially cured. That's wonderful news, Claire said warmly. I'm so happy for you both. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it. That's Mike. He's outside to pick up Emma. I should go. After she left to collect her daughter, Marcus and I sat in surprisingly comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent. This is nice, he said after a while. Today, seeing Noah so happy, having a normal birthday party instead of... He trailed off, but I knew what he was thinking. Instead of a hospital room, instead of worry and fear and the constant beeping of machines. Yes, I agreed. It's everything I wanted for him. Marcus studied me, a question in his eyes. You know, sometimes I feel like you knew. Somehow you knew Noah was going to get sick long before he showed any symptoms. My breath caught. What makes you say that? He shrugged. Little things. The way you started changing around the time you took him to that specialist in Boston. The urgency you felt. The way you weren't surprised by the diagnosis, just determined. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Mother's intuition, I guess. Maybe, he said, sounding unconvinced. Or maybe it's something more than that. Something you can't or won't explain to me. Before I could respond, Noah came bounding onto the patio, his energy seemingly inexhaustible despite the long day. "Daddy, can you stay for a movie?" he asked, climbing onto Marcus's lap. "Mom said we could watch Inside Out if you want to." Marcus looked at me, a question in his eyes. "If you want to," I echoed Noah's words, surprising myself. It's his birthday, after all. A smile spread across Marcus's face, a genuine smile, the kind I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. "I'd love to." As we settled in the living room, Noah between us on the couch, I found myself in a strange state of déjà vu in reverse. This moment, the three of us together, watching a movie, Noah healthy and happy, was one that had never existed in my first life. Yet it felt familiar somehow, like a dream I'd once had, or a memory from a life I'd never lived. Noah fell asleep halfway through the movie, his head on Marcus's shoulder, his feet in my lap. We continued watching in silence, neither wanting to disturb our son's peaceful slumber. When the credits rolled, Marcus carefully shifted, trying not to wake Noah. "I can carry him to bed," he offered quietly. I nodded and watched as Marcus lifted our son with gentle ease, carrying him up the stairs to his bedroom. I followed, turning down the covers as Marcus laid Noah down, his movements slow and careful. Noah stirred slightly. "Dad?" he murmured sleepily. "I'm here, buddy," Marcus said softly. "Go back to sleep." "Did you have a good birthday?" I asked, stroking Noah's hair. He nodded, his eyes already closing again. "The best. You and Dad were both here." My eyes met Marcus's over our son's head, a moment of perfect understanding passing between us. Whatever our differences, whatever had broken between us, we both loved this child more than anything in the world. After Noah was settled, we walked back downstairs in silence. At the door, Marcus turned to me. "Thank you," he said simply, "for today, for letting me be part of it." I nodded, suddenly unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "Liv," he said hesitantly, "I know you've made your decision about us, and I've accepted that, hard as it is. But maybe we could try to be friends. For Noah's sake." Friends. With the man who had broken my heart in another life. The man who, in this life, had fought to remain in our son's life, had stepped up in ways I never expected. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, "but I can try. For Noah." He nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "That's all I'm asking." After he left, I stood on the porch for a long time, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Something had shifted today. Some rigid part of me that had been holding fast to the bitterness and fear of my first life. I wasn't ready to forgive Marcus for what he had done, even if he hadn't done it in this timeline. I wasn't ready to trust him with my heart again. But perhaps I could trust him with Noah. Perhaps I could let go of some of the fear that had driven me for so long. Perhaps in saving Noah, I could begin to save myself as well.